Yeah, I mean, I think we've approached the St. Louis game kind of with a break from San Diego through. Just kind of an opportunity, again, to reflect back on the month of July, take some learning lessons. I think really spend time reinforcing a lot of the things that we're about, get back to consistent training, I would say cycle without so many games, to really continue to refine our principles, how we want to go about things. And so it's been a really good 10 days of being able to be just focused on ourselves. And even going through that Aston Villa match, it was much more about being ourselves, knowing that we we're going to get challenged by a good opponent, but not so much in game planning or studying Aston Villa, but looking ahead towards St. Louis and continuing our process of how we're going to prepare versus them.
Thanks, Coach. We'll start with Julian and go down the line, and feel free to ask 2 questions if you have them.
What did you like, I guess, about the fight that your team did show in that friendly?
Yeah, for us, I would link it also back to the San Diego game. Is even when things might not be perfect and not being executed well, the foundation of this team is that there's I would say, a competitive mentality and a winning mentality. And we're going to go till the final whistle, and we're going to push it all the way to the final whistle. When you saw the San Diego match, it was down to trying to go to the last corner kick. And even with Aston Villa, whatever it is, it's 75th minute, we're going to get a goal that we're going to keep pushing, and that's a real good, for me, foundation of this team. If that kind of transcends everything that we do on good days and bad days, if we keep that winning mentality inside the group, I think it'll lead to great things for us.
Is consistency the biggest thing that you still want to see this last kind of home stretch of games for the regular season? Or?
Yeah. For us, it's we're focused on reinforcing who we are and what we want to be, and getting into the best form possible, and getting as many players into the best form as possible, because we know what we don't control what's going to happen, but we control the way our inputs. What do we put into the work every day, and how prepared we can make every player know their roles and responsibilities, give it to them with clarity, deliver to them, and teach it with efficiency. So for us, that's what it's all about. Starting 10 days ago ish, and all the way through the what I would say is the 10 games that we have left. Every other game that we have after the 10 is we have to go out and earn it. So that's our mentality.
Yeah, it's not super often that you get an extended break like this, like 2/3 through the season. I'm just curious, what are some of the areas that you were really kind of looking to refine and kind of hone in on for the last 10 games?
Yeah, it's a great question. Really about just like the simplicity of like the phases of play. So can we just become a little bit better in our positioning, a little bit more consistent through build-up? Can we be better, more cohesive, collective in how we're building pressure and recognizing triggers and doing it? For us, that's always sort of our foundation. And so it's just about being a little bit simple in the teaching and being better at the basics.
And then I wanted to ask about Matt Corcoran. We just saw that he was loaned out. From Mike's statement in the press release, it sounded like it might be more of a shorter term loan. I'm just curious what the plan was for him, and if the U20 World Cup had kind of any impact on that.
Sure. Yeah. So for Matt, we want to try to find as much playing time as we can for young players. That's the starting point. It's been hard for us to get him playing time because we have a good strength, a good midfield, and so what Matt was able to do is really give us, I would say, support and help through the congested period of time. And now that we're in a little bit less congested period, we thought it was an opportunity to sort of get him into meaningful games with Rhode Island, to get him playing time, to continue to get experience, continue to his development, and then certainly, we are a club that wants to support club and country. We're passionate about that. We're not. And we don't hide behind that. And so we want to set our players up, I would say, for the greatest opportunity to be selected. And we thought, that was another factor. I wouldn't say it was the driving factor, but it's certainly in part of the equation of trying to, I would say, look after each individual player's development.
Bob?
What do you see in the St. Louis team?
Yeah, so I think what you saw since the coaching change is a team that plays with great spirit. There's definitely a clear identity on how they want to go about it, and it's interesting that they have a lot of different pieces that can hurt you, right? So they have deep lying midfielders that can get on the ball and play in behind you. They have, from crossing situations, they've got great box presence that they can score. They've got a goalkeeper that can keep them in games when needed. So for us, and then they get to play in front of a really passionate home crowd that does well to support their team. And so, I think for us, it's an opponent that we have a great amount of respect for, that we continue to prepare through our process. But it's a team that I think has the ability to kind of, maybe exploit you in a couple different ways, which is always a dangerous team.
Was it good to see some of those guys got there at Astonville that had playing time? What'd you like about seeing them?
Yeah, it's critical. It's critical. It's not this group makes my decisions weekly hard, because there's great competition, and every guy is so committed and put it there. So to give some guys different opportunities was really good, and I thought the way that they performed was really good. And to give guys some extended minutes and get longer looks at them, I think it'll only pay dividends for us as we kind of go into the final 9 regular season games in the Open Cup that we have left.
Jacob?
Yeah, BJ, since we're talking to Joe after this, and I kind of wanted to ask about him and maybe a little bit about his performance this season. What have you seen from him, just being where he is in his career, in his mid-30s, having been with Nashville a while, but having to also kind of learn and adjust to a very new, pretty contrasting style of play in terms of just playing with the ball at his feet a little bit more and doing a lot more distribution than he has in years past. How has he been able to kind of pick that up?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be great for Joe to go back home and play in front of the St. Louis crowd. We're looking forward to trying to get our first ever Nashville win at that stadium. For Joe, the first primary job of the goalkeeper is to keep the ball out of the net. That's why Joe's had such a long and illustrious career, because he does a great job of keeping the ball out of the net. And then all of the credit beyond that goes to Joe. You're right. As a guy who's a well-established veteran and has ways of doing things, like his open-mindedness and willing to develop, you can still continue to develop in your career and adapt. And I thought he's done a really good job of taking that on, taking in the coaching, and being brave to do it. It's not easy to do it in front of a lot of people, but he's embraced it, and for me, I think has done a really good job, and been really, I would say, adaptable, in what we're trying to do.
Next week, Red Bulls in Philadelphia are playing in the U.S. Open quarterfinals, and that'll be your next opponent in the semifinals. Is that a game you're going to be watching pretty closely?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've said it from the first day. We take the Open Cup seriously. I don't think getting to the semifinal is proof that that's what we're talking about. And yeah, I mean, they're two teams that we obviously watch a lot already. But of course, that'll be a game that we have our eye on, and then we'll start to layer in that preparation as we probably get closer to the match date, and where we know where we're actually playing and those type of things.
Black.
Talking about Red Bull and Philly just now, these are teams you know very well. You've seen them so many times. What's the difference in preparation between that and somebody like St. Louis, where this is the first time for you personally to play against them?
Yes, that's actually a really good question, because we talk about that all the time. St. Louis is a team that, being in the West, you probably aren't watching as much. So we're thankful that we've had 10 days to kind of dive deeper. I would say a lot of it, the beginning process, when we're looking at it through the phases of play, that process remains the same, but we probably have to do, and we did, a much deeper dive on individual players. I think as you kind of watch teams more, you learn tendencies of players. With St. Louis, I think we've had the opportunity to go a little bit deeper and kind of give a few more, give each individual player on our team a few more insights into who their direct matchups will be, versus if you play Philly for a third time, they know there's not, each guy knows each guy enough. So yeah, just a little bit extra, and thankfully we've had that time to be fully prepared.
And then I just wanted to ask, we saw Tyler Boyd out on the pitch and training, not only where he is on his kind of recovery journey, but also what sort of role do you see for him for the rest of the season?
Yeah, so I think Tyler won't be available for this weekend, but I fear to use the word day-to-day, but he's close. And the role that I think he's going to play is, I think, one that sets him up for his greatest individual strengths. That's a job of our coaching staff. That's something that we're focused on here, is utilizing him there. I think for us, it's a player that can play between the lines, a player that can run at defenses. Typically, we know that he likes to come off one of the sides, to get on the ball and run. And then he's got a knack for finding space in the penalty box. So, I think that's kind of that final connection, is getting him connected with the other guys to, hey, where do you like the ball? What spots do you like to score from? But for me, it's a welcomed player that we are expecting back soon, that can, only add to the competition piece and bolster our team as we kind of go through this final phase.
All right, thanks, Coach. Thanks, guys. We'll be right back with Joe.
Great.
Yeah, it'll be a fun game. Obviously, I'll have a lot of family there, some friends there. But ultimately, it's just another game for us. We're approaching it that way. Our objective is very clear, that we're trying to get 3 points. We've had a pretty successful year so far, and, we're pushing for trophies, whether that's the MLS Cup or whether that's Supporter Shield. And we're in a position right now that we are, able to win every competition we're competing in. So we're looking at this like just another game and another opportunity to get 3 points.
Thanks, Joe. We'll go down the line again, start with Julian and ask two if you'd like.
I read that your uncles had a huge part in your soccer career. How important were they influencing you in a place where baseball is kind of king over there?
Yeah, they were both soccer players themselves. One of them played professionally for the Chicago Sting back in the NASL days and the minor league or the indoor leagues. But yeah, they were a huge influence on my brother and myself. They kind of introduced us to the game. My dad played a lot of sports, but he didn't play soccer, so they were a big part of that. And having an older brother who took to the sport at a young age definitely influenced me as well.
What was it like when people are maybe kids growing up, maybe playing baseball or hockey and then say, "Oh, I'm a soccer player"? What was kind of the reaction you get there?
I mean, to be fair, first off, I played every sport growing up too. I played baseball, hockey, soccer, basketball, volleyball. But St. Louis is such a big soccer city that youth soccer, especially when I was growing up, because we didn't really have a professional team. No offense to the St. Louis Ambush, the indoor league team that we had. But yeah, a lot of kids played soccer growing up in St. Louis and continue to do so. And it just has such a rich history in soccer that they've always been a great city for that. And to finally have an MLS team is something really cool and something that I'm happy for all my friends and family who still live there.
Yeah, Joe, I was going to ask about that. I mean, St. Louis has kind of been like one of the main soccer cities for a while in the U.S., like going back several decades. What do you think about it? Like, has kind of lent itself to, just being a place where a lot of soccer players come from?
Yeah, I think it's just the history. I think if you go back to the early 1900s when there were a lot of Italian and German immigrants there, they kind of took over and the game, they introduced the game to the city, and there were just a lot of different moments throughout history. You look back at the World Cup game where the U.S. beat England, and that was such a huge deal. I think a lot of that team was from St. Louis, and then leading up, I know there's a lot of different teams that won Open Cups there, and I remember St. Louis University in the 70s went on a run where they won the national championship a ton of times. So I think all of those things just add to it and breed a community that loves the game, and that has trickled down from generation to generation and continues to do so. And so I think that's a big part of it is just knowing your city's history and what's happened there.
And then you mentioned just being alive in kind of all three competitions that you're competing for. I know you've been, you've made runs in the MLS playoffs and Leagues Cup in the past, but it feels like at this point in the season, this is the closest you've been, at least towards the Supporter Shield table. What do you feel like it does anything different for you guys mentally, just knowing that there's tangible things to fight for?
Yeah, for sure. I think this year, more than any year in my career, what I'm seeing is a mentality that guys are almost addicted to winning. So I've been on teams in the past where you win a game, maybe you win 3 games in a row, and it's cool, and then you kind of take your foot off the gas because you have that to rely on, and you kind of hope maybe you make the playoffs, and then anything can happen. But with this team and the mentality that we have, we want to win every game, and we believe we can win every game. And we've had a lot of success, so we've kind of proven to ourselves that we can win big games against difficult opponents at home, on the road, in difficult environments. And I think we all have that belief, especially now we have 9 regular season games left. We're so close to it that we're not taking our foot off the pedal. We're going to keep pushing, knowing how close we are and knowing what we can achieve.
Bob?
Joe, what do you see in the St. Louis team?
It's a team that can be unpredictable. They are, if you look at the standings, they're struggling a little bit right now. They've had an up and down year. They've had a coaching change. They've been plagued with injuries for a while, but they have a lot of those guys back. So they have a lot of pieces that can hurt you. They have a very difficult atmosphere and environment at that stadium. So they're a dangerous team. They're a team with guys who have a lot to play for. They're playing for their jobs. They're playing for their reputation. Whether they're playing for a trophy or not in this, it doesn't really matter. They still have something to play for, and that makes a dangerous team.
Joe, going from the summer, last 3 months really, where you've had multiple games almost every week, to now where you finish off the last 9 games of the season, basically a game every weekend, kind of just less congested schedule. How different is that how different is that for your preparation for each game? Is it more like the beginning, like it was at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, it's nice because you get a little more time. There's pros and cons to each. But I think the benefit of having a less congested schedule is you have more time to prepare for each individual opponent. So, we've done 4 days we will have done 4 days of preparation on St. Louis leading into the game, which is, not always the case. So hopefully we'll be as prepared as possible, knowing what they like to do on the ball and knowing how we can exploit their weaknesses and go after them.
What was it like watching Brian and Xavier share the net against Aston Villa? And I guess what, if anything, maybe did you have to offer them as feedback or just any congratulations or anything like that after the game?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really say much, but I don't think they needed it. They're both excellent goalkeepers, and that's the nature of the position, is that only one can play per game. So you don't always get opportunities to show how good you are. I think they're both incredible, and I'm glad that they were able to get a real opportunity to show everyone.
Joe, you talked a little bit about preparation for specific opponents. BJ was just talking about like one-on-one matchups on the field and stuff like that. But what does that look like for a goalkeeper for opponents? Is there anything specific you do per opponent other than maybe like penalty, I guess? Okay.
Yeah, we watch videos on different attacking players that they have and what tendencies they have. Is this a guy who likes to run in behind? Is this a guy who likes to drop off and create plays more? Do they drift to the back post? They drift to the near post? Different tendencies like that. We also look at how they press and how we can break that down when we're building out of the back. So there's several things like that that you can look at and take information from in preparation.
And then there's sort of a divide in American soccer between the Supporters' Shield and MLS Cup, and what does each one mean? What's your take on it, I guess, and which one would you prefer, I guess?
I prefer both. I think in America we love playoffs, so I think the MLS Cup probably still holds more weight in our league. So I guess if I had to choose, I would take the MLS Cup. But that being said, we want to win every game. I want to win every game. I want to win as many trophies as possible. So it's not just about trying to make the playoffs and hoping for the best. It's about making a real statement and, you know, showing the rest of the league and the country what kind of team we are.
Go ahead, Julie.
I forgot to ask earlier.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite soccer memory growing up?
Favorite soccer
Out there in St.
memory
Louis.
growing up? Wow. In St. Louis, probably playing for my club team growing up. It was called Scott Gallagher, and I think the first time we ever won like state cup, it was like the state championship. I think that was probably my favorite memory because it was something as a kid who, you know, I watched older kids play in, and it was really cool just to be able to say we're the best team in the state. And I think it was probably seventh or eighth grade when that happened. I will say my worst memory of St. Louis soccer was when I was in high school. I was a sophomore, and I hadn't really been playing on the varsity team. This was with the high school team, and I hadn't really been playing on the varsity team very much. And we made it to the state championship, and I ended up playing in the state championship, and we got beat pretty bad, 3-0, in front of all my friends and family, and it was a terrible experience. But something I learned from, and yeah. But more good memories than bad memories, I'll say.
All right, thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate it.